Hey guys, Hold up guys! Before this video starts, I have an important announcement to make. The P.O. Box is down in the description. Check it out now. Hey guys, it's Ricerboy, and today we're going over the 5 easiest cars to learn how to drive manual in. So learning to drive a manual transmission car is by no means an easy and quick process. It takes a lot of learning, time, and patience. And having a car that's easy to modulate, control, and drive on a daily basis is imperative for being able to learn how to drive a manual transmission car well. Good cars to learn manual transmission on typically have light clutches, have shifters that aren't resilient to movement, and also are easy to drive on a day-to-day basis. So the first car I'm going to have to pick is the Honda Civic, excluding the model years 2001 and 2008. Because no matter how bad Riceman's Civic is, one thing I can give it credit for is it has a very easy to modulate clutch and a very positive shifter. Now I mean that in the sense that unlike this car, when you're in Riceman's Civic, it will shift into any gear no matter what you want to do. There is no resilience in the shift linkage, and it's very smooth and it's always easy to tell which gear you're in. In this car, on the other hand, the gears are spaced very tightly together, and it's actually a very hard stick to modulate. Giggity. Honda Civics have always been famous for having very upscale and high quality controls for a vehicle as cheap as it is. One thing that I can give the Honda Civic credit for after driving one myself is that the shift linkage is very nice and the clutch is very light. Those are qualities that are highly favorable when you're learning to drive a manual transmission car. And even though Civics typically don't have much torque and you have to rev the piss out of them to get started off, I definitely would not mind driving one every single day if it meant that I was able to learn manual transmission correctly and smoothly. Now number 2 is a bit of an oddball choice, but hear me out. The Chevy Corvette is a good car to learn manual transmission on. Now, unlike the Civic, with the Corvette, you don't have to rev it up to go from a stop. In fact, the benefit to the Corvette is that it has a lot of low-end torque that's available for easy output. Now that I'm currently driving a manual transmission car that has low-end torque, I can clarify that it has its benefits. When you start with this car, you barely need to use any gas when you're releasing the clutch. That's actually quite a good thing because you can really easily learn clutch modulation since you don't even need to use the gas. Meanwhile, in a Civic, as mentioned earlier, even though you have a positive feeling shift linkage, the clutch pedal is essentially useless without the gas. Now, since my dad owns a Chevrolet Volt, I have spent a lot of time in my local Chevy dealership. And an interesting thing that I noticed is that the 650 horsepower Corvette Z06 has a lighter clutch than this early 2000s performance compact. I don't know how that makes any sense, but it just is the way it is. Now, even though as a first car, a Corvette would be absolutely terrible with the awful weight distribution and the uncontrollable torque and power to the rear wheels. However, it has a very light clutch and a very positive shift linkage. Even for having 7 gears to work with in the shift linkage, there is legitimately more spacing between those individual gears than what I have in this transmission right here. And personally, I would not mind driving a Corvette every single day, even if in rain and snow it isn't that good. Now my third choice has to be the Mazda Miata. In my personal opinion, the Mazda Miata is like the rear-wheel drive version of the Honda Civic, in that if you want to learn how to drive and control a vehicle that's small, practical, reliable, and in a given size class, it is the one rear-wheel drive car to get. Now, just like the Civic, with the Miata, you have next to no torque to work with when driving the car. However, in a sense, this actually makes it easier to learn manual on, because as you get used to using the gas to get the car moving from a stop, that means that you can learn hill starts better and also just get a better adaptation for how a well-driving manual car operates. Miatas have always been famous for having very tight and dialed-in controls, including a short throw shifter from the factory, along with a very, very, very light clutch that is extremely easy to modulate. In fact, Miatas are so famously easy to drive for being rear-wheel drive cars, they're commonly referred to as hairdresser cars, and I'll even admit that I wanted one back in the day. But now I have this car, which has possibly the worst shift linkage I've ever had to use. Now, number 4 will probably make people more mad than with the Corvette, and that's because for number 4, I chose the Toyota Corolla and Celica. Ooh, that's a big bump. Well, guys, I have some business here at the bank, so I'll be right back. Well, guys, I'm back. And I took their soda. Well, now, since I like the environment of this bank parking lot, I can justify why I decided for the Toyota Corolla and Celica to be on this list. So let me put it this way. Toyota gets a majority of their automotive sales through the fact that they want to present that they make driving as simple and easy as possible. The reason Toyota cars have less technology than many of their competitors is also because Toyota sells their cars based off of simplicity. Most people who buy a Toyota just like the idea of having something that they know that they're familiar with instead of having something with all of the groundbreaking technology that you'd expect from other manufacturers. In fact, Toyota vehicles are so simple to operate and drive in daily usage that my driving school had Toyota Corollas. From what I remember, the steering was so ungodly light. It was the lightest that I'd ever felt. And when it came to the sensitivity of everything in the car, everything was just wooden in controls, and deliberately so. Now, when it comes to when I say Corolla and Celica, I mean in a very wide span of time. Because if you know what initial D is, the AE86 model of the Corolla is definitely something to consider if you're an enthusiast. And when it comes to the Celica, there are actually some fun versions out there. The last generation of the Toyota Celica was front-wheel drive. However, there was a GTS model which featured a 6-speed manual and the 2ZZ engine. This 1.8-liter unit is actually closely associated with the engine that Toyota developed for Lotus to use in the Elise. One thing to note about this engine is that it has an extremely high redline, and if you ask me, sounds pretty good. Toyota has built their reputation on making cars easy to drive, and when it comes to their manual transmissions, they're not only easy to use and operate, but they're very difficult to break. So my last pick will have to go to the Ford Fiesta St. Now, even though this is a newer model car and it will be more expensive to buy if you're looking at this list as a first-time driver, it is actually a very fun and easy car to drive. At least with the last generation model of the Ford Fiesta St, it is powered by a little tiny teensy 1.6-liter turbo 4-cylinder engine. Now, naturally because of this, the clutch assembly of the car doesn't have to be very big or very difficult to use. And one thing that Ford definitely did right in making the Fiesta St is by not only making all of them manual, but by making the clutch extremely light and easy to modulate, and by having a very positive feeling shift linkage with actually a very nice knob from the factory. Ford's recent modernizations of making more sport-oriented vehicles has been very successful, and it can definitely be seen through the Fiesta St. It has been reviewed very highly, and I can easily see why. It is a car that I certainly wouldn't mind driving every single day, and when it comes to the blow-off valve noises, they could sometimes be pretty noticeable. Well guys, I think that'll do it for this video. If you're going out there looking for an easy car to learn manual on, those are just 5 of my suggestions, but there are many good cars out there to consider. So if you have any suggestions of what you think is good to learn manual on, leave it in the comments down below. I'm interested to see what you think. But on that note guys, as always, thanks for watching, and peace out. Fuck you, you stupid mufflerless truck. Only I can be loud.